Good morning, church. My name is Lori Moreland, and I'm on staff at Heights Church, and I'm also a volunteer leader in the junior high ministry. I want you to step back in time with me to a cool autumn morning in the Jerusalem temple. It seems like a normal day to everyone else, but today is a very special day to one individual, Zechariah the priest, who has waited his whole lifetime to be able to come before God and offer him incense, has finally been chosen. He's an old man, and he's a man who's used to waiting and used to knowing that God's timing is perfect, and maybe God's answer will be no yet again. And he has prayed and come before God and had this opportunity 6,400 times, give or take a few, and the answer has always been no until this very day. So as he is preparing his heart to walk into the holy place with the incense, there is a cacophony of noises around him. The heavy doors open up. You can smell the olive oil burning in the candle holders. You can hear the cows and the sheep. You can hear babies crying, and you can hear people gathering. His assistant has already cleaned that gold square altar, and another assistant has brought in the live coals from the previous offering that had been made. And now it's Zechariah's turn. And he comes in with an incense burner in his hand, and he walks to the altar. And the only thing that's lighting the room is the 7 candles of the menorah on one side. And in the temple, there's the shewbread that is on the other side. And before him is the veil, the curtain that hangs between him and the Holy of Holies. As he prays and he gets ready to put the incense onto the live coals and to wait for that smell to come up that smells like balsam, he is putting that onto the live coals, and he looks up and his heart just stops inside of his chest, because inside of the room that is only supposed to be him, there's another being. And that being says the words that he says so often to many people that he visits. He says, "Do not be afraid," because right at that moment, Zechariah is startled and he is afraid. And the angel goes on to tell him these amazing things. He tells him that he's favored, and he tells him that God has heard his prayer. And Zechariah is thinking in that instant, what prayer did he hear? And he says, you are going to have a son. And Zechariah just can't get his mind around it, because he thinks, I have stopped praying that prayer like 20 years ago. I am an old man. I have prayed that prayer 54,750 times since Elizabeth and I were first married. And I am a man who is used to hearing God say, no, this is not my will for you. And I have accepted that, and I have stopped asking. And he dares to challenge Gabriel, and he says, how can this be? I'm an old man. And Gabriel says, I am the angel that stands by the side of God, and because you don't believe me, from now on, you're not going to be able to speak a word until this prophecy has been fulfilled. And Zechariah goes on serving without saying another word. The people outside the temple are wondering what is going on. He's taken too long. They're waiting for him to come and say that promise, that prayer over them that says, let God keep you, may his face smile upon you. But when he walks out, he can't say anything. And they can tell that something had happened inside of the holy place by the way he's motioning his hands and the way he's looking, the expression on his face. And they don't know what happened because he can't speak a word. You know, Zechariah and Elizabeth were good people. They obeyed God's laws, and they were holy in the eyes of God. But the people around them have been talking over the years. Why didn't they have children? What was wrong with them? Who sinned? Did Zechariah sin, or did Elizabeth sin? Why did God not give them children? Or maybe they didn't sin. Maybe it was their parents that sinned. And this kind of gossip had been going on around him his whole life. And he was kind of used to people talking about him. But this time he can't answer. He can't say a word. He can't tell people about the vision he saw. He can't tell them about the prophecy that Gabriel had just made over him. He can't tell them his thoughts, his doubts, his questions. He just goes on, and he goes home to Elizabeth, and he can't tell her. He can't tell his fellow priest friends. He can't tell the people in his community. All he can do is wait and pray. And in that time, in those 288 days when his child is being formed inside of Elizabeth's womb, he comes before God and prays. According to the traditions of the Jewish people, they come before God 3 times a day and pray. And so he has come before God 864 times, talking to him about what is about to happen. And he can't speak. 8 days after his child is finally born, and they bring him forward for the circumcision ceremony, and he's standing before all the people, and they're asking, what will you name him? We're going to name him Zechariah. Obviously, that's what the people in the community are saying, and Elizabeth says, no, we're going to name him John. But they don't want to listen to what Elizabeth says. Instead, they look at to Zechariah questioningly, and he asks for something to write on. And when he gets the writing implement in his hand, he writes, his name will be John. And at that moment in time, like that, his tongue has been released. And instead of saying anything else, he starts to prophesy about what God is going to do and how God is going to fulfill his promises that he made to the people of Israel. And then he goes on to prophesy what his son will do. And he praises God. And this is how the Christmas story begins, with an old man who accepted God's no, but in an instant, God said yes. And not only yes to what Zechariah had longed for and wanted, but yes to bringing the prophecy to all the people of Israel, and then to those outside of Israel who accept Jesus Christ as their Savior. So I wish you all a Merry Christmas, that you will feel the blessing of this season, and remember that God is still a God of miracles, and he does amazing things in our lives even today.